commanders aren't getting the message. They're not getting it right. And so until you have transparency and accountability and actually listen to the survivors that say the reason why they're not reporting is that they don't trust the chain of command will do anything, or they fear or have witnessed retaliation. Until you take that seriously, you are not going to be able to fix the problem.
New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand says out loud what many people fear to even whisper. Retaliation numbers are alarming when it comes to female military members reporting sexual assault crimes. Senator Gillibrand has led a bipartisan group of senators seeking to pass legislation that would put lawyers in charge of investigating serious crimes in the military, particularly rape and sexual assault, and not leave these cases to military justice. One supporter of this change is former Air Force, a captain and a lawyer, Maribel Jarzabek, who's been outspoken on the matter and also has experienced backlash from the military for having a political opinion. Maribel, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, sir.
This is a fascinating topic. It's also a dark topic every time we look at it here, but we need to take a really harsh look at what you've experienced. You were an Air Force lawyer, and they then put you into the newly created role of Special Victims Counsel, then to deal with this from a military aspect, correct?
Correct.
How long were you in that counsel role before you looked at it and said, this is just useless?
I was about 4 months in when I realized changes need to happen and we need to take this out of the chain of command. I was not a supporter of taking out of the chain of command when I entered this job.
But what was it? What was that moment when you said to yourself, because you obviously had cases in front of you, and then you were seeing evidence and you were hearing testimony, but what was it that did that snap that said, this is wrong?
There were actually two cases that really did that, where I found that, and a couple more thereafter where it really has solidified my decision making. But basically it was a high profile case now that I had, that General Franklin had to make a decision on. But my client and I had asked, well, there was a very biased investigation. The Article 32 hearing is called. It's basically like a preliminary hearing. And the prosecutors believed that the hearing was very biased. And when we wrote a 12-page memorandum to the generals to address what we saw wrong with the hearing, and to address what we saw really victim-blaming biased recommendations by the investigating officer to the commanders on why they should not take the case to court-martial. My client wanted to meet with the decision maker, and she didn't have a right to meet with the decision maker. She has a right to meet with the legal, but she wanted to meet with the decision maker, and we were ignored. My request was not even addressed. We were never even told, thank you, but we're not going to meet with you. And so really, they dismissed charges. Really, in that case, after they dismissed charges and then we were basically ignored, I really realized, changes need to happen. My client has a right to meet with legal, and we can really hold, the lawyers accountable for this, but she didn't have a right to meet with the commuting authority. But the biggest thing then thereafter, a few months later, was really another case that I had where my client's command retaliated against her. But even when this case started, they were making comments about how my client was taking advantage of the system.
Well, let me just stop you there for a minute. When you say that there was retaliation, I've only got a few minutes left here. I want to get this in. What do you mean?
Okay. She became emotional during a meeting, and a few weeks later, she was picked up for her dream deployment. We let the command know that she was picked up for her dream deployment. And then thereafter, a few weeks after that, they then took away her guns, said it was because she was emotional during the meeting a few weeks earlier, and told her that if she wanted, in order for her to continue with the case, she would have to, in order for her to get her guns back and to deploy, she would have to drop out of the case. So
they were basically telling her that the only way that you can continue as a member of the military is you've got to walk away from this, and whatever happened to you, act like it never happened.
Correct. I mean, if she wanted to report, if you want to report, you're never going to have you won't be able to do your job.
Would people be astounded to know that rape, sodomy, the other assaults that go on, the number that go on an everyday basis around the world?
Yes. When we entered this job, we did not think that we were going to have the amount of clients that we did. we had to go back to our leadership and say, and it wasn't just me, it was all of us SVCs, we need more help. We are having so many clients that we can't handle them. So we were surprised, everyone was surprised.
When we look at what's happening with Kirsten Gillibrand and what she's trying to do with her legislation, it has been blocked by a number of senators and other lawmakers saying she's going too far with the legislation. When you hear something like that, and having heard the stories from your clients, do you think how despicable that is?
Yes, I do, because she's not going too far. She's actually absolutely correct that we need an unbiased, professional prosecution, decision making where the prosecutors who are specially trained and are experts at evaluating sexual assault cases and in treating the victim well, we need them to be really handling these cases, and especially from what I've seen. And I'm trying to advocate and to let them know, like, this is what we're seeing. And I think the Human Rights Watch report is really a good report for them to look at to see what is happening.
I've only got about 20 seconds left. Do you have pressure on you? Is the military still trying to pressure you? Do you fear any repercussions?
I don't anymore because I'm not in the military, but I do fear that possibly because my husband is, they could retaliate against him. I have had other people in the military tell me, be careful, they could go after your husband, but that hasn't stopped me from speaking out.
Captain, and I do use that respect, and I thank you for your service, as many of us do. We're going to keep in touch with you on this. Please keep fighting this fight. It makes no difference how long it takes. Every single one of these people has to be ferreted out and removed from the military. You're doing the right thing. Maribel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
All right, we'll come back soon and talk about this subject. But next, to the Money Master.